Thanks so much for tuning into Talking Point today. I'm your host, Neeraj Shah. The equity markets have started off the year pretty well, not just in India, but globally. The question, though, from an Indian markets perspective, is that the first quarter of what arguably could be a very eventful 2022 is laced with multiple events. So, is volatility the the almost the certainty for the first quarter, and how should an investor set his portfolio up uh, for the very important first quarter as well as for calendar year 22, which comes on the back of two fairly strong years of returns. Mr. Krishna Kumar Karwa, MD of MK Global Financial Services, joins in. Is this unique perspective of knowing both what his buy side portfolio management services business is doing, as well as his robust sell side institutional desk is doing as well. And therefore, his perspective would be very crucial and critical. Mr. Karwa, good having you. Thanks for joining in. Hope all is safe.
Good morning, Neeraj, and wish you and all your viewers a very happy new year and stay safe, stay healthy, and look forward to the interaction in the next 23 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Wishing you and yours a very happy 2022 too. Tell us, Mr. Karwa, I read your note with keen interest. You seem to be suggesting that the mean returns or the mean returns that investors should expect from the Nifty would still be in the positive territory, but maybe investors should be a bit tempered in that. Is that on account of the fact that we've had two strong calendar years, so to say, from the March lows? Or do you reckon there are other factors which lead you to believe this?
I think you have to look at the context in the context of A, the valuations that the current market is, and B, the earnings expectations. So if you look at the valuations of the markets, I mean, they are quoting above the average standard deviation. So one is, so we have kind of discounted the robust earnings growth which is expected in the next few years. So typically what you could possibly see is that A also B, we as analysts are always positively inclined. So there are always chances of our earnings expectations, etc., we're getting tempered with. So the view is that yes, earnings growth for the next 2 years could be 20% plus compounded. But all that earnings may not get reflected in the underlying stock prices because maybe the markets have already discounted most of it. So that's the reason we believe that yes, economy is doing very well. Corporates, various segments of the corporates companies will do very well. But stock prices, we need to temper our return expectations. We have already appreciated 25% plus for the last calendar year, and before that also we have had robust growth. So return expectations should be tempered with, and also you should possibly expect that maybe the returns will get reflected in your stock prices in the second half of the year. First half, maybe you could see much more volatile growth in the corporate stock prices.
Okay. I have one more follow-up question on flows, and I have a three-pronged question, if you will. Calendar year 21 saw Indian markets do well despite the fact that the foreign flows there were significant foreign outflows, if you will, all through the year and not just in the last quarter. The SIP flows indicate that the retail inflows continue. And the third point that I want to add, which I borrowed from your note, you made this interesting observation that as corporate India steps up on capex, the treasuries could start unwinding some of the mutual fund and stock positions, if you will. And I wonder what kind of impact could that have on the outflows from the primary market or from the secondary markets?
Yeah, rightly, Neeraj, you have rightly pointed out that we have had robust inflows, no doubt. Last year, almost like 95,000 crores of inflows and SIPs of almost 8 to 10,000 crores a month kind of numbers we have seen in many months. And as you see economic activity picking up, it is not only corporate treasury, but even small businessmen, etc., who, when there was liquidity and the businesses were not doing well, so and with FDs or bank deposit rates being what they were, so a lot of money has flown into the markets, and also we have seen robust growth in the NAVs of various mutual funds. So a rising market obviously attracts more capital and more investments into the funds. Now, going forward, we ourselves are saying that the returns from the market should be tempered with also as capacity utilization inches up as the economy is doing well, corporates will tend to put more money to work in their existing businesses. So there is a distinct possibility that yes, whatever treasury money has flowed, most of it does flow into debt funds, but there is a significant amount of money which also flows into kind of equity kind of products. And there would be some outflows which is going forward. So net, what we believe is that domestic inflows, they will continue to be robust, but to expect an encore, a kind of a similar number may not happen on two counts. One is as people invest in their own businesses, and B is also return expectations would get tempered with. So the opportunistic type of investors, they would tend to withdraw from the market. The regular investors who treat the markets as part of their overall asset allocation, they will continue to invest.
Got it. Mr. Karwa, what's your institutional desk's understanding of the large global investors' positioning? Because we all know that they were negative, I mean, for Indian markets, so to say, largely as a bucket all through 2021. Can this year be different?
Typically, yes, there are two ways to look at it. One is that there is a lot of churn which is happening in their portfolios, which is that traditionally they have been very big investors in the financial services part of the business, and rightly so, where 35-40% of the market weightage is to financials. But of late, what we have seen is that many of them are excited about various new businesses which are getting lifted, which gives them a play on the next 5-10 years of growth in the new technology-driven businesses, new platforms. So there is a decent amount of churn which is happening, which is one thing. Second, as far as yes, they have been careful on the overall valuations and how the currency will behave. I think their flows, inflows, outflows to some extent are also driven by the fact that if they believe that the rupee is expected to weaken, then there will be more outflows. So I will believe that this year also, the flows will be tempered with global into the emerging markets per se. And our markets have done very well. So we should be prepared for a muted kind of flows on a net basis. And also look at it this way, that FPI outflows have been to the extent of say 80-90,000 crores in calendar year 21. But if you look at the primary inflows, they are also of a similar extent. So net, it is not that they have withdrawn from the market. It's just that the portfolios have got churned where they have put more money into primary markets and withdrawn from the secondary market.
Interesting. Okay. Mr. Karwa, within that construct then, I would like to get into the minutiae, if you will. One of the points that you make is that by virtue of the fact that the fiscal deficit numbers as a percentage of what they are, the supplementary grants that have come into the government, and maybe add to the fact that the fiscal deficit, of course, a resultant of what the revenue numbers on the GST front as well, and we could probably see heightened spending in the first quarter of this current calendar, which is the Jan, Feb, March quarter. In lieu of the fact that the headline numbers may stay flattish or marginally volatile, how do you then therefore believe that equity markets and what parts of the equity markets could benefit as a result of this hypothesis, assuming it turns out to be true?
If you take a clue from the Q2 numbers itself, and how it goes, the clear cut, I think that there is economy is in a momentum, and the whole banking financial services space, the top banks have been able to show robust credit growth in Q2 also. Asset quality concerns are not so high. And I believe that this trend will continue, which is that as we see the numbers, credit growth pick up. Again, on a systemic basis, maybe it is not there, but the top banks are able to garner a bigger share of the overall increase in credit growth. So going forward also, as your economy picks up, I think this is the sector, and which will continue to show robust growth. Most of the top quality banks have sufficient capital adequacy, and valuations are also reasonable. And also look at it from a mean reversion perspective. If you look at the bank Nifty from a 5-year perspective, it has not exactly delivered any great robust returns. It has underperformed the benchmark indices, or rather, it has underperformed the overall market big time. So if you are positive on economic growth, then this is one segment which should deliver very good returns. Apart from that, I think the government of India continues to be very aggressively investing in infrastructure, and primarily road infrastructure, where there seems to be massive input, massive growth coming in. So I would imagine that all companies or all sectors which are associated with that, which could be your EPC companies, BOT companies, those kind of companies will continue to see robust order inflows, and will get reflected in their numbers in the coming quarters. So that is one segment which will continue to do very well. See, some of the impact of this positive inflows or other positive government spending could also be reflected in the overall rural India economy, which seems to be kind of struggling in the last quarter. So we have seen some impact of that in maybe two-wheeler sales and FMCG companies seeing a slowdown in rural India sales, etc. So once again, an aggressive round of spending by the government in the next quarter, we could see some revival in the rural India economics also. So, and that will be a very broad this thing, but positive vibes will come from various companies which are exposed to the rural India. So my judgment is that these are some of the sectors which should continue to do well, I mean, on their own, plus they will get an added impetus because of government spending. One more point which I may add is that in the next 6 months, you should possibly see some major elections, state elections. And that also has a positive rub-off on a lot of spending happens, and primarily it happens in rural India from the various political parties itself, and also the government or the local state governments also do their two-bit in terms of aggressive spending. So that also will create a positive flow in the economy. Money will rotate into the system, and which will have good impact, secondary impact on various consumptions. Four-wheelers, passenger vehicles, they typically tend to do well whenever there are major elections. For the need for electioneering campaigns, etc., you see a lot of buying of. So that is one segment which I believe should do well, which is the passenger vehicle segment. Should get, as it is poised for a recovery, and this should give them a short-term impetus.
In effect, Mr. Karwa, just drawing a bit of a conclusion for autos, for example, a laggard of a sector in 2021, mean reversion plus two-wheelers plus four-wheelers, plus if the belief that the economy-facing stuff will do well, then a CV cycle pick up, seems to suggest that autos might well be a space to watch out for, not just in Q1, but for the year at large.
Absolutely. In fact, I believe that auto inflation, and primarily the passenger vehicle and the commercial vehicle space, that is the segment which should outperform big time in the next 12 to 18 months. Two-wheelers, possibly, I'm not so bullish. Sales are sluggish, inventory in the system is there, and the threat of EV is possibly the maximum and the nearest for two-wheelers. Versus that passenger vehicles, there is a robust demand, and so I believe that is the segment that should possibly do well. And commercial vehicles, again, as the economy picks up and the infrastructure spending, and as more movement of merchandise across the country, so there should be a basic uptake in the commercial vehicle segment. So that's the two segments where you should be more bullish on. Auto ancillaries, I think you have to be very careful. Better to play global auto ancillaries which have a very robust exposure not only to Indian markets but to global markets. And if you can figure out how much is their risk to traditional ICE part of the business, and if that is very limited, then some of the auto ancillary companies will also do very well. In fact, it's much more easier to invest in auto ancillaries, irrespective of which vehicle or which model of which company will do well as far as the OEM are concerned.
Yeah, that's true. Just a quick follow-up. Somebody I was talking to yesterday also mentioned that the CapEx related theme might not just be a near-term but a medium-term theme, because even if you believe that the Indian CapEx might take time, the global CapEx is certainly up and about, and therefore that leads to some of the Indian exporters do well. And by the time that flattens out, the Indian CapEx will pick up in full steam, and that will aid. Plausible, or you think you differ?
Oh, definitely, I 100% agree with that thesis. And in fact, apart from auto ancillaries, I think if we have to look at one more sector which should possibly do very well is the whole industrials, and which includes right from cement to various other segments of the capex cycle. My sense is that if you look at the top 2-3 companies in various manufacturing sectors, everybody seems to be at 75-80% kind of capacity utilization. If you interact with the CEO of most of the large corporates, they are all aggressively talking about, or rather have already initiated various capex plans. Balance sheets of most of these companies are very, very robust, so they do not have any challenge in deploying capital. So when you look at the capex cycle, two things is: one is the ability to invest, and the other is the willingness to invest. Willingness is a function of what kind of demand scenario that they see for themselves and the existing capacity utilization. So which obviously augurs well for a massive capex cycle picking up. And ability is, interest rates itself are very, very low. Plus balance sheets of most of the corporates are also very, very robust. So the ability to invest is not in a question. I think in the last 1 year, whatever has happened as far as even the government of India has encouraged domestic manufacturing big time, various PLI schemes. And it's a question of time before something will be done to even encourage exports, because China Plus One is not going away. So manufacturing sector per se is poised for a massive growth in the next 3 to 5 years. And capexes are going to be there. As you rightly said, obviously many developed countries have also announced various fiscal stimulus. So there will be a massive capex overseas also. So many of the domestic companies which are into the cap goods segment, they will have a two engine of growth, which will be exports as well as the local growth. So that is one segment which should do well. Some of the companies have run ahead.
Yeah.
And we'll have to be very, very careful. But that is the case in any ways. My sense is that whenever a sector is in momentum, market decides what are the valuations.
That's nice. I was about to ask you that aren't you skeptical of some of the valuations, but I'm glad you brought that point up any which ways. Mr. Garba, last couple of questions. The last one is on the IPO pipeline and LIC and some of the others. But before that, what have you as a house, both on the buy side and the sell side, thought around these new age consumer tech companies which have gotten listed? Because you rightly said that you brought out the point that some of the global guys have churned portfolios into those, but the resultant valuation is very stiff. Does it allow safe participation because of the multi-year growth trajectory, or would you be skeptical about the valuation itself and maybe wait for better entry points?
See, there are two ways to look at it. One is that you have to assess the business opportunity itself over the next 5 to 10 years and make some with valid assumptions. So some of the businesses you can feel that these are places where only 1 or 2 players will survive and grow. I mean, they will take away the market share and that platform effect will come into play. So if you are able to make a valid assumption, or rather a very realistic kind of an assumption in terms of what kind of growth these businesses can foresee in the next 5-10 years, and then you do some kind of a discounted DCF valuations, you will arrive at some point of time where, okay, this is the valuation at which you should invest in. The question one has to ask is that in the interim, when you have to fund that growth, if you are a continuous loss-making company, will the markets be as benign as they have been today to fund that growth? And if you believe that, okay, no, these are some of the companies which are going to be survivors, then you go for it. So valuations just don't get taken in by immediate overvaluation. I think you should look at the long-term opportunity and whether they can be the winner or whether there can be competition in those companies. So we are bullish on some of the plays, and we believe that investors should start investing with the scope to average out. But you should be vigilant on what kind of burn these companies are going through and whether their ability to raise resources, how robust is it and once they are listed. I think that is something which needs to be careful. One area where we believe that there is going to be massive competition and maybe there are not going to be too many winners is the whole fintech space. Because there we believe that the existing ecosystem, the existing banks, etc., they will be able to replicate whatever these fintech companies are trying to achieve. So, and that's a very fragmented part of the business. So there, the survival and growth of many of these fintech companies could be a challenge. They may, at the end of the day, so their valuations could be under massive threat because there is no loyalty over there. I think they are burning money trying to get customers, but customers will keep on moving. So I believe that the banks, which are digitally very savvy, they will collaborate with these fintechs and maybe replicate their technologies over a period of time. So that's one space where we are very, very careful in investing in. I don't know whether I've answered your question.
No, you have. You most certainly have. So thank you for that. And I'm guessing some people will take leaf out of that and try and do a detailed understanding and probably some projections and try and understand the ability of these companies to fund themselves before they try and do it. But yeah, fintechs, beware. Final question on the IPO bandwagon. Does it slow down a little bit? Does it have any resultant impact? And this very interesting point that you made about the LIC IPO and the resultant impact of that on the insurance space as well, before we wrap up.
My judgment is that behemoth like LIC, whenever it gets listed, I mean, it will find a place in the various global, local indices in the next 6 to 9 months after it gets listed. So that is going to take away available resources from other existing financial services investments that investors would have made. So that's going to be a slightly negative for the other players in the ecosystem when such a behemoth gets listed. That is the limited point I have, that there is only, currently we are at around 37-38% as far as the weightage of financials, banks and financials are concerned, as far as Nifty is concerned. Now, the moment this company gets listed and becomes eligible to be part of the various indices, it's going to take away that space from somebody else. And you have the passives which are becoming bigger, and most of the active funds also are benchmarked to these indices. So whether you like it or not, but this stock will find a place in the active portfolios and in passive by default. So it's going to take away some space from other financials. So to that extent, it's slightly negative as far as allocation of capital or allocation is concerned for other financials. As far as the IPO market is concerned, I think the markets have matured a lot. So we've had 2-3 marquee IPOs getting listed below issue price and substantially below issue price, but it has not prevented others to go for listing, and we have seen massive appreciation on listing also by other companies. So I think it is a function today. It is a function of how robust a business are you listing and at what attractive valuations are you giving it to the investors. So yes, I think we have some 45,000 crores worth of IPOs lined up for the next quarter. It will be a mixed bag, and investors will be looking forward to many of the IPOs, provided it is valued at attractive valuations. And many of these businesses are new businesses which are getting listed. So investors would be very keen to invest in new businesses. So I foresee a very positive response to most of the IPOs, subject to obviously valuations.
Got it. Great talking to you, Mr. Karwa. Could have continued for another 25 minutes, but I guess we'll do it some other time. But thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you for inviting me.
The pleasure was ours. Viewers, thanks for tuning in.